Ancient trade was within nature's carrying capacity. Whatever nature was giving, nature was able to sustain. We were living in that. But today, on one side, you have households, which is you and me, your house and my house. On the other side, you have industries and companies and corporates. The industries make the products. And who goes out and buys them? You and I. Right? So there's a market for products here. Who works in these economies? Who works in these industries?
People,
You and I. Right? So the households supply the labor which is required to do everything in the industry. Companies, to organizations, to institutions, all of that. This is the flow of goods and services, the black arrows. Because there is a cycle of goods and services, there is exactly opposite flow of
products.
No, money. When I'm buying some from the industry, I have to give them money, right? So money from my house will go to the industries. And because I'm going out and doing work with companies, the companies have to pay me a salary.
somehow
Right?
like a barter system, is it, sir?
Indeed, it is a barter system. The only difference is that in a barter, actual products which are wanted are exchanged. But in the economy, it is currency which is exchanged. So it is a barter system. Absolutely. You're not wrong. So the flow of blue lines is the flow of money, and the flow of black lines is the flow of goods and services. Now, in the center sits the government. And the government takes, so again, there are blue lines which are going from houses, and this is the tax. There's a GST for this, there's a income tax here, there's a GST here, and there are corporate taxes here. The government collects the money on all these goods and services. And what does the government say? The government says, you give me a part of your income. So the government takes these taxes and says, we will give you infrastructure, we will give you roads, we'll give you railways, we'll give you airports, we'll give you seaports, we'll give you the judicial system, we'll give you the police system, we'll give you all that is required so that this economy can be well lubricated and running very, very smoothly. So with the taxes, government collects the taxes and invests in all of this infrastructure, which goes on to lubricate the economy. And once that is done, then we have a well lubricated economy, which is continuously running. And then what happens is the flow of goods and services in the economy decides how much money is generated. So this cycle, 1 minute, let me take the pointer. There's a pointer. Yeah. So this cycle, how fast this cycle happens, decides how fast this cycle happens. Right? So this is exactly what the economy is. Now, the most important thing we did not write in the economy, and the reason why I left so much space on the right-hand side of my screen, is that industry runs on natural resources. Look around you. I am sitting on a table which is made of wood. It's coming from nature. I have this laptop in front of me. It's got plastic. It's made from crude oil. There are minerals in it. I'm sitting on a chair. It's made of steel. I'm walking on a floor which is made of vitrified tiles. The silicon has come from sand. There is a wall in front of me made of cement and bricks. All of that is coming from nature. Each and everything which is produced in the industry requires natural resources. By now, you would have realized what I wish to say. As the economy grows, what happens?
Natural resources.
Natural resources
get depleted.
have to deplete. Have to deplete is the underlying thing. Have to. What is the second most important thing which happens with the economy? I've left a lot of space at the bottom. What do I want to show there?
Population increases. Okay, pollution.
I can see nodding heads. There is no pollution in nature. No pollution. Pollution happens only because of man-made molecules. Only and only because of man-made molecules, right? So it is stuff which nature does not know how to decompose is what pollutes it. And pollution is directly a result of the natural resources. Therefore, the real capital of the economy is natural capital. And the real cost of the economy is the pollution, which is now, and the granddaddy of all pollution is climate change.
Sir, I have one doubt in this regard.
Yeah, go ahead.
if natural resources are not making pollution, so what we can call it the wildfire and the volcanic eruption as such.
Volcanic eruptions have happened right from 4.6 billion years. The
Yeah,
Earth started around 4.6 billion years.
yeah,
Volcanic eruptions have continuously happened at that point of time. But at the same time, the carbon sequestration capacity of the planet was abundant to accommodate for all the gases which were generated. And over the last around I would say over the last around 1.2 billion years, the atmospheric composition has not changed. We still have 21% oxygen. We still have 79% nitrogen, right from 1 billion years. So the nature has a capacity to assimilate what it produces, right? But once we start producing other non-natural greenhouse gases, which are not found naturally in their free state. For example, freon is not found in its free state. You have to make it into its free state, and then it becomes a polluting. Thus, so the fuel of the economic engine is nature, and in this economic engine, there is only one thing which is gains important, and that is currency. What do I want to say here? What do I want to say? What do I want to say with currency? Currency growth. This is what I want. Our only measure of economic growth is GDP today, gross domestic product. Again, oversimplifying, what is gross domestic product? You add up all the blue arrows. Economists, please forgive me. I'm oversimplifying. Yeah. So if you add up all the flow of currency, you will get the gross domestic product. But you open any channel today, it will be talking about how much India's GDP is rising. You open any newspaper, it will have something to say about the GDP. We are a nation fixated upon increasing our GDP without understanding that every rupee rise in the GDP is going to deplete the natural capital, is going to pollute, and is going to produce harm in nature. What are the resources that we take from nature? And I'm going to go a little fast here. There are 4 types of resources which we take from nature for the economy. Yeah? I just showed you the economy. We take non-renewable resources, which are, of course, coal, oil, minerals, and metals. We take renewable resources. Most important is solar energy, gases, water, oil, forest, fish stock, biomass, so on and so forth. We take global public goods, which is clean air, flowing waters, oceans. They are required, very much required. And finally, this is what I want to spend some time on. We need ecosystem services. Any idea what are ecosystem services?
Life supporting attributes of nature that humans use.
Absolutely. Life sustaining services which nature produces. Primary food, hydrological cycle, carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus cycle, atmospheric gas balance, which Ram was mentioning, nutrient recycling, protecting freshwater sources, seed dispersal and pollination, carbon sequestration. You can write 100 other things. I have just made a list of what I know. There are so many ecosystem services which are required for sustaining life and therefore sustaining the economy. Even if one of this does not perform, the economic cycle is affected dramatically, right? The hydrological cycle does not happen in Marathwada in Maharashtra, and there is a drought. Livelihoods of farmers become zero in that year. Nobody is able to earn anything because there are no dams in some parts of Marathwada. We have to depend on the hydrological cycle. The nutrient cycling does not happen in farms. We have to buy fertilizers and put fertilizer in it. The seed dispersal and pollination does not happen like in vanilla. There is no pollination. Farmers have to manually pollinate vanilla pods, vanilla flowers. We have to spend money, we have to spend time, we have to spend efforts of these ecosystem services don't happen. And imagine, link it back to the earlier slide which I showed you. Pollution is reducing the efficiency and the productivity of ecosystem, right? So these are the inputs to the economy, and these have got an extrinsic value, which means they have got a market value. What is the reason that steel is priced at 90 rupees a kilo? What is the reason compressed natural gas, CNG or LPG, which you use in your house, is priced at 1,000 rupees a cylinder? What is the reason petrol is priced at 101 rupees?
Less availability.
Demand and supply. You're right. It is about demand and supply. How much is the demand and how much is the supply? If the supply drops and demand rises, price rises. If demand drops and supply rises, price drops. So therefore, this is called as extrinsic value. Yeah. Extrinsic value is the value that you and I attribute to a natural resource in the economic marketplace. But these things are give the life sustaining capacity to the planet, and they have an intrinsic value. What would be intrinsic value? If you understood what is extrinsic value, what does intrinsic value mean?
It doesn't depend on the demand.
Absolutely. It does not depend on the market economy. The honeybees are going to pollinate free of cost. Hydrological cycle, we do not spend even one farthing on it. No government in the world spends any money on the carbon cycle, on the phosphorus cycle, on the nitrogen cycle. None of these. They have an intrinsic value. They have a value which is their value of being there in nature. What would be a corollary? What would be a corollary of what I just said? The corollary is that because there's no demand in the marketplace, we consider them to be free. We don't assign any monetary value to any of these services. Sad truth of the economy. So extrinsic value, we are pushing up. GDP growth, we are pushing up. We are pushing up. We are pushing up. And when that is happening, intrinsic value is going down and down and down. The degraded ecosystems. So this is leading to a better material life, but this is reducing the life sustaining capacity of the planet. Again, link it back to the GDP growth. With every percentage rise in GDP, there is a reduction in the life sustaining capacity of the planet. That is the sad truth of the economic engines. So I'm now going to come to market failures, problems with the economy. I want to now talk about the other three variables, which I talked about one variable, which is ecology, how the economy affects the ecology. I will also talk a little bit more about how it affects the ecology, but now I'll also add in the component of equity. There are five main failures that we will look at. Of course, there are many other failures, but I'm just going to talk about some of them. The first failure is what I call the tragedy of the commons. The tragedy of the commons means that when nobody owns anything, nobody is responsible for its upkeep. Nobody owns the atmosphere. We can pollute as much as we want. Nobody owns the oceans. We can dump as much plastic into it as we want. Nobody owns the rivers. We can put as much domestic sewage into it as we want. That is the tragedy of the commons. And I'm going to explain each one of them in detail. The second failure is resource distribution. Natural resources are not distributed equitably in this economic engine. Again, I'm going to talk with examples. So just bear with me. Pollution, and I'll talk about externalized cost. Unemployment has been a huge failure of the economic market. Again, I'll explain why. Inequality, not just in equity, but inequality in wealth and incomes is something which is the failure of the market. And finally, the granddaddy of all is the allocation problem of the government budgets. Where should the government spend money? To buy more bullets or to buy more bread? Now, that's a big question. So I'm going to talk about each one of them. Let's talk about the first one, the tragedy of the commons. There's a beautiful 3-page essay by Garrett Hardin, which is titled Tragedy of the Commons. Those of you who have not read it, I would encourage you to pull it out from the internet and read it. This is a beautiful essay. It appeared in Science magazine in 1971 or something. A lovely small essay. And I'm not going to talk about that. I just want to say something about the tragedy of the commons. And the tragedy of the commons is that because we do not see how much stock we have, we keep extracting natural resources. We don't know how much crude oil supply there is on the planet. We don't know how much coal India has. We don't know how much iron ore we have. We are giving away licenses to mine it every day. We are using more technologies, faster machines, burning more fuel, digging deeper, all to produce more coal, to produce more iron. We are extracting from our future generations. We have no clue about whether we have finished the stock and whether our future generation, your children, my grandchildren, will have anything left or no. That is the tragedy of the commons. Let me show you something which I pulled out from the Ministry of Natural Resources. You can go to the Ministry of Natural Resources and look at their button called List of Exhausted Mines. Interesting. These are the minerals which have exhausted completely from these mines. In Andhra Pradesh, so many mines are now dead. In Goa, Sakorda mine is dead. Gujarat, Aditya mine is dead. Jharkhand, Dhadu, Kahalgaon, Manduapat, Rajpar,